News was, Indianapolis at that time had three newspapers. The Indianapolis Star came in the morning, and the Indianapolis Times and the News were afternoon papers. And we took all three. There are a couple reasons for that. Perhaps my father wanted to see the grocery ads, you know, for business, you know, Carnation is advertising, you know, Wilson is advertising, Pet is advertising, who knows? But he needed to know that. So that's possible, one reason. But when major events happened in the world, my parents somehow got a notice in the mail that they were personally going to be affected, whether it was the Depression or my father was called, he was drafted for World War II 3 weeks before Pearl Harbor. And then what he always, the rest of his life called that Korean mess, because, you know, we never declared war, Korean conflict, whatever it was. As soon as there was a newspaper headline, you know, he's tapped on the shoulder. You know, Uncle Sam wants you, and this depression means you. And so I think, and the letters my parents wrote back and forth when he was away, that first year of my birth, every letter, it describes my mother minutely reading the newspaper for, like, tea leaves, for clues about, you know, how long the war is going to last. It's going well. No, the Chinese have entered the war. There's a point system for who's going to be released, and you know, does that mean you? Does that? So, and at one point, my father tells Mom to stop listening to the radio because he can tell by her letters that it upsets her. But she is transfixed by the news. She's going to read all of the newspapers. She's going to listen to all of the radio newscasts. And growing up, my father would save all of the papers, and he'd put on his nightshirt and get in bed, and the bed would be littered with the newspapers, which he would read before bed. I cannot imagine that. I look forward to the newspaper every morning. It's my personal ritual, and I also get 3 newspapers every day, but I couldn't read the news before bed. Put all that in your head and go to bed. So
knowing what was happening in the world left an imprint on Jane Pauley.
It was just in the house. We weren't a family that discussed the news at dinner. It wasn't. We weren't.
You weren't quizzed on the paper.
Oh, absolutely not. There was no quiz of current events. It was personal. If anything, we were protected from bad news. So much bad news had happened in my parents' lives. We were very protected from that, as if you can protect kids. You know, kids know everything. You know, we have no business more important than knowing how our parents are doing. But that said, there was always news in the house. The implicit message of all those newspapers and the radio, or then when the television came and the news was always watched, was that the news mattered. And I think we probably were one of the first families to have a television, and that would have been news-related, not entertainment. So that my formative television experiences would have been the Kennedy assassination, the civil rights conflict was huge with me. Not having brothers, not having any boyfriends vulnerable to a draft, having a sister. More than Vietnam, civil rights was formative with me.